near peak bubble, nowhere near. When you look at the original tech bubble, and the thing is, a lot of people say you can't look at the original tech bubble compared to this, and I could argue till the cows come home that you can and you should, because they are almost identical. But there are a few discrepancies here. So with the original tech bubble, it was only a US market. It was only the US and maybe bits of Canada that had any say in the price of the tech bubble, i.e. the NASDAQ and all of the silly tech companies that are coming into play. The currency supply was low, 12 times lower. There was only 272 million people in the US. Now, obviously, a very small percentage of them were actually playing with this market, but it's still worth noting. Limited social media. It took 4 minutes to load a bloody web page back in 1997. And in terms of having access to an account, you had to have a certain net worth and then a direct market access account with a big bank like Goldman Sachs, etc. So very few people actually could play with the price of the internet market until it got to around 1999-2000, where things like E-Trade came along and every man and his dog could just open up a share trading account and buy pets.com or whatever, or Enron, or yeah. So it's very similar to this. Like right now, it's very hard to buy cryptos. Very hard for the average Joe. You guys have been sort of educated, or you've educated yourselves, so you guys don't think it's hard. But for the average, like my mum or dad, no, none of my family would know how to buy a crypto other than me. And I'm pretty sure most of your families wouldn't have a Scooby where to start. So, yeah, so I think give it a few years, then yeah, everyone will be able to buy cryptos a lot easier. But it's the same. Limited market access, and the governments, or the US government and the Canadian government, did not touch the market. They had no influence and they kept out of it. But still, the US tech bubble was one of the biggest bubbles in human history. Even despite all of that, and there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, Bebo, MySpace, there's nothing. I don't know what they had back then, but I remember when I was even, 2004 or 5, Google wasn't even around. I remember using Alta Vista to do my internet searching. The term, I'll just Google blah, didn't exist. Facebook didn't exist till 2006. So even though the speed of information traveled around very slowly, like on a daily basis, pretty much, we had the biggest bubble ever up until that point. So let's look at this bubble. And yes, in the short term, this is a highly speculative bubble. This is a global market. Every country on the planet, every person on the planet can play with cryptos if they have access to or funds and also an internet connection. The currency supply is at least 12 times bigger. There's 1 to 3 billion people that could play with this market. Remember, there's 3.2 billion people right now that don't have access to the internet. But the rest could, technically speaking. Obviously, a large proportion of them are going to be old and young, etc. Instant news, media, and this is why FUD is so prevalent. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Because fake news can travel instantly. Or news stories can launch and then be Chinese whispered, like Koreans are banning all of their exchanges. No, they weren't. China's banning all cryptos. No, they're not. Yeah. And the thing is, a shepherd in Mongolia could get out his iPhone and buy Bitcoin if he wanted to. Anyone can play with this market. And there are now governments meddling with the price of this. So Bulgaria took down a drug cartel about a year or so ago and ended up with a big chunk of Bitcoin. And to the point where it's in the billions. They have billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. And everyone was rather scared because they're like, oh God, does Bulgaria know what it's doing? Are they just going to dump it on the open market and crash Bitcoin? But it seems like they're switched on. They didn't have someone like Gordon Brown saying, sell, sell, sell. He sold half our gold at the worst bloody time in history. So yeah, we have governments around the world playing with crypto. So I think you must compare this bubble to the original tech bubble, except this time it's a global market. Anyone can play with it. The currency supply is sloshing around like oxygen or nitrogen, and it should. And the thing with markets, especially tech or emerging markets, is that the bubble tends to be in half the time and twice the distance, as a rule of thumb. So when we're looking at the original, or the NASDAQ here, it peaked at $6.7 trillion. and then it smashed back down to 1.6, which is a 76% crash. And it took basically, I mean, it says 1994, but let's look at 1997. I think most people agree that 1997 was when it really started taking off. Bit like 2017 for cryptos, really starting to take off. It was from here to, I can't even, it's about 5 years. Sorry, my eyes. Yeah, it's good. In the break, just come up close and just look at it and you'll be blinded. So it's like 5 years, basically, 5.5, 6 years. Whereas the crypto bubble should be, rule of thumb, 3 years, twice the size. And don't forget, it's 65% of US GDP, which is ridiculous. 65% of US GDP right now is about $12 trillion. Not that it will get to that point, because it's a global market, but yeah. And also, don't forget, money was worth a lot different back then. So 6.7 trillion back then is worth 9.26 trillion in today's money. Personally, I think we're going to see a lot higher than $10 trillion before we hit peak bubble. But I'm going to start getting itchy feet around 10 trillion and start extracting profits. I may take, in fact, there's no point me saying what I will do because my mind always changes according to data at the time. So who knows? But Ellie has forced me into a pact that when we hit £5 million total portfolio, we'll take out 3 million, as in into sterling, and put it into proper assets, and then leave 2 million on there for she'll let me do it forever. So Ellie's the boss. So yeah, and when half the planet wakes up in an online sense, and it's consumed the FX market, and they all get crypto accounts. Like in 20 years' time, we should see $5 quadrillion, at least. Like people say, this is the age of tech, but really it's the age of enlightenment when half the planet wakes up. Imagine all the ideas, the talent, the businesses, the talent, idea, and businesses that 3.8 billion people will bring. Yes, they are poor. Doesn't mean they're not clever. They're very clever people over there. So yeah, 10-year horizon. Now, I'm being very soft with these. I mean, these are no-brainers. Basically, we'll get more exchanges and better exchanges, decentralized exchanges. I think decentralized exchanges will be good, but a little part of me thinks, is a centralized exchange that bad? Because if you have a decentralized exchange, which no one owns or controls, when you have a support query, who are you going to ask? Like, you're putting it out to the community. So I think a decentralized exchange is a good idea, but as long as it has the community with it. So if it's something like our Facebook group, where you guys freaking rock, and like someone asks a question, it's always answered, always within minutes. So if it's something like that could be good. And also, we're going to have things like atomic swaps in exchanges. So for those of you not familiar with atomic swaps, the simple way, so if you have, let's say you're in Tron and you want to convert it into ethos, let's say, you have to sell your Tron into Bitcoin or Ether and then go and buy ethos, right? And there's obviously transaction charges and spreads along the way, so you're going to be losing out a little bit. With an atomic swap, it's basically crypto magic, because you go, I want to go from Tron to ethos, go. And all of a sudden, you've just swapped. So there's a cross-blockchain swap, and it's called an atomic swap. So that itself is going to reduce commissions, etc. So it's going to be great. Sovereign cryptos, we're already seeing Estonia, Canada, Russia, Venezuela, China, and a mad dash to launch their own sovereign crypto. And it won't be long until the rest of the world catches up. I think those that launch it faster will be disruptors within their own field. It's upsetting that the Bank of England looked at launching its own crypto and recently went, nah, not for us. Where has our innovation gone as a country, as a nation? It's ridiculous. So, yeah, sovereign. Yeah. So, and the thing is, this is going to go hand in hand with the war on cash. So, for a long time, countries or all governments have been hating cash, because to maintain a cash supply, it's very expensive. It costs millions and millions of pounds per year to maintain the notes, etc. The new plastic notes we now have are very expensive. Yes, they may last a lot longer, but they're very expensive. And what they're going to do eventually is phase out cash. So Scandinavia are leading that charge. You go to Sweden, you won't see any cash pretty much these days. And what I see happening, this is just, again, my opinion hat on, I think, let's take the UK. Eventually we'll be forced to have our own crypto. So the government, Bank of England, will go, hey everyone, here is e-sterling or crypto pound or whatever. And guess what? It has instant value because you can pay your taxes in it. Which means, by default, you'll be able to pay your mortgage, your rent, etc. in sterling, in crypto pound. And they will use existing financial infrastructure to propagate its use. So at the moment we have chip and pin and contactless with our debit cards, etc. And when we go to pay for stuff at the checkout, you can either swipe or chip and pin, etc. Well, your crypto pound account will be linked to like a crypto pound. You have a crypto pound account linked to some sort of debit card with chip and pin, contactless. And so you do your everyday shopping with that, and it will come out your crypto pound. And they'll get it so it's so easy to use that people will just use it. Where was contactless 3 years ago? It wasn't. Eventually they'll get this won't happen soon. I think over the space of maybe 3 to 5 years, the whole nation will be coaxed into using sterling pound, and they'll get celebrities on adverts, go, hey, use sterling pound, crypto pound, it's really easy. Just like how they're forcing the new workplace pension in with all those fancy adverts. And once a majority is using it, then they'll start phasing out cash. They'll get rid of the £50 note. And when you get rid of the £50 note, you halve the UK currency supply. Not many people know that. Then, when in say 15 years' time, when the plastic note starts wearing out, they go, oh, we'll get rid of the 20, 10 and £5 notes because they're getting all tattered, and we don't really want to spend £100 million printing new plastic notes. So we've got crypto pound anyway, so that's all we need. And they will do this under the banner of, who uses cash anyway, unless you're a drug lord? Only druggies use cash. That's what they'll do. And also tax dodgers and cash in hand people, they're the only people that use cash. Every good hard-working citizens use crypto pound. And that's what they'll do. But really what they want is to know who earns what, where you're storing it, where you're spending it. Because when you're stuck in a crypto pound, they see everything. HMRC's everything. They'll tax you at source. So you can't do any tax dodging. They'll tax you everywhere. So you can't hide it. And if you do choose to buy Bitcoin with crypto pound, they'll know exactly how much you've bought with it. So they'll tax you again on future earnings or automatically, because it'll all be done on a smart blockchain. So yeah, I think that's what's going to happen over time. But that's just, again, opinion hat on. Orbital men business is going to be redundant. You've heard this before. And yeah, biotech is going to be growing. Yeah, as I said yesterday to the traders here, it won't be long before we have like a RFID chip in our hand or something. So we pay for stuff with our hand, and it's connected to our crypto account. All trust will be decentralized. Anything that requires trust right now will be on some sort of blockchain. Escrow will be on a smart contract blockchain. Buying houses, lawyers, accountants, you're screwed. Anything that has trust will be decentralized. The voting system. And yeah, I've talked about platform coins already, as in exchange coins, but I think privacy coins will do very well. I've put instant settlement there, but I think that's going to be just like a no-brainer, like a default. But privacy coins, you need to assume that there's going to be crazy amounts of regulation coming in over the next few years. Hell, this year onwards. And with heavy regulation, especially in places like China, where they just do a blanket ban of everything and then slowly claw it back, people will then be forced into privacy coins, especially in oppressed countries like North Korea, Venezuela, etc. And as a result of that, I think privacy coins will do well. Monero, maybe not Verge because they haven't got their act together yet, but I forgot who. I think it was Greg. Is Greg Field here today?
He's Vegas.
He's in Vegas. Great place to be. So, but I think he found 4 first, and it's a really great coin. It's a privacy coin. It does everything all the other privacy coins do, and it's aiming to be the first eBay of the crypto space. So they're launching they are ready to launch their marketplace anytime now. So you can actually go and buy stuff, and you have to use 4 as a currency. So yeah, anonymous buying, which I think that will be quite cool.